The Washington County Trial Court is now back in session. The court will call the case of the people of the state of Michigan versus Gina Ganon, case number 21 F1 1443.
Fawn Armstrong, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney on behalf of the people.
David I. Goldstein appearing on behalf of the defendant.
Ms. Ganon, could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, good morning, Your Honor. Gina Ganon.
Good morning, ma'am. All right, we're here for preliminary examination today.
Yes, Your Honor, I do have one witness to call. May I proceed?
Yes, Mr. Goldstein, it's my understanding you're holding the exam. That's correct.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may proceed, Ms. Armstrong.
I apologize. I also wanted to place on the record, I did send an email to Mr. Goldstein offering the 1-year misdemeanor use of methamphetamines. It's my understanding that that has been rejected.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may proceed, Ms. Armstrong.
Thank you. People call Officer Samuel Bradley.
Officer Bradley, how are you this morning?
Good, how are you, ma'am?
I'm well. Please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may lower your hand. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Bradley, where are you employed?
Pittsfield Township Police Department.
In what capacity?
I'm sergeant assigned to day shift.
Were you working in this capacity on August 19th, 2021?
Yes, I was.
And what were your duties that date?
As a police officer assigned to road patrol.
And were you on those patrol duties on or about 21 hours, 21:54 hours that date?
Yes, I was.
And what location were you at around that time?
I was in the area of Packard Road and Carpenter Road.
Is that located within Pittsfield Township
It is.
in Washtenaw County?
Yes.
And what were you wearing at the time?
Full police uniform.
And were you in a vehicle?
Yes. And a fully marked patrol vehicle.
And at that location around that time, what did you observe?
I observed a vehicle traveling, would have been eastbound on Packard, east of Carpenter Road.
And what drew your attention to that vehicle?
Several things, one of which the vehicle had a white light to the rear. It was actually the license plate light that had appeared to have fallen from the socket or the housing and fallen down, showing a white light to the rear. The vehicle drifted slightly in its lane of travel, striking the lane marker as well.
And on the license plate light, having that light, the white light to the rear, is that a violation of a motor vehicle code?
Yes, it is.
And based on your observations, what did you do?
I conducted a traffic stop on Packard Road, just east of Hewitt.
Did you make contact with the occupants of that vehicle?
I did.
And did you make contact with the driver?
Yes, I did.
Were you able to identify the driver?
Yes, ma'am.
And who did you identify the driver as?
Gina, and if I heard it right, I'm hopefully I'm saying it right. Is it gone? Hopefully I'm pronouncing the last name right.
And were you able to identify her with any sort of state issued ID?
Yeah, her Michigan driver's license.
And after you made was there anyone else in the vehicle?
There was.
Observed?
Well, first observed there was a front seat passenger.
And what did you make any sort of observations about the behaviors of the driver and passenger?
At the time, not initially. They said that Gina had told me that she was from the Monroe area. The gentleman in the passenger seat said he was from Ohio. Gina said she was from Monroe, however, was visiting in the area of Ypsilanti.
And after that, did you later on observe anything about their behavior that drew your attention?
Yes, after I returned to the vehicle, they showed some nervous behaviors. Both of them had been smoking a cigarette, which when I walked back to my patrol vehicle. They were not smoking. I did the computer checks on my car, reapproached the vehicle, and they were now smoking cigarettes, which is sometimes a sign of increased nervousness.
At some point, did you ask the occupants to exit the vehicle?
Yes, I did.
And for what purpose did you do that?
Based on some of the increased nervousness I saw with the smoking the cigarette, I also had run a Clemens or clear check, which is our report writing system, and I didn't notice initially, but I had recognized Gina. I arrested her in 2017 for possession of methamphetamine at that time.
And when you did she consent to get out of the vehicle?
I just asked her to step out.
And did she step out?
Yes, she did.
And did you make any further inquiries of her?
I did.
And what did you ask her?
Yep. So at the rear of the vehicle, I asked if there was anything.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to any conversation at this point. He indicated that he asked her to step out of the vehicle. He is a police officer in a full uniform, driving a fully marked patrol vehicle. He has stopped the defendant's vehicle. She is now detained. She should have been Mirandized, and there has been no testimony that she was Mirandized. So I'm going to object to anything that she said to the officer.
Your Honor, the people would argue that the police officers are allowed to conduct a small investigation, essentially a Terry stop, prior to putting someone under arrest, or custodial environment, custodial custody with questioning, interrogation, which would require a Miranda. At this point, it's merely a preliminary investigation to determine what's going on based on the signs that he had observed.
Your Honor, for Miranda purposes, you don't have to be under arrest. You have to be detained. And it's clear she was detained. She was asked to step out. She didn't open the door and step out of the vehicle. She was asked to step out of the vehicle by the officer, who, by the way, had her driver's license in his possession.
So
she was detained at that point, Your Honor.
I think we have to have more of a foundation that she was detained. I'm not ready to make that determination at this time. I'm going to deny it. If you want to ask some additional foundational questions for voir dire, I'll allow you to do that, Mr. Goldstein. But at this point in time,
I will, Your Honor. Thank you. Sergeant Bradley, you took the defendant's driver's license when you first approached the vehicle. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you took it back to your vehicle to run it through the system.
That is correct.
Okay. And did you at that point return her license to her?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So you still had possession. In fact, you left it in your vehicle when you got back out of your vehicle, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I didn't give the license back, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, I wasn't given back.
Okay. And then you came back, and at that point, by the way, she did have a valid license, did she not?
She did.
And did you find any wants or warrants for the defendant at that point?
I did not.
Okay, so you're not claiming that you were detaining her based upon a warrant of any kind?
Well, she didn't have any warrants, no.
Okay. So then you came back to the vehicle and you asked her to step out of the vehicle.
That is correct.
Okay, she didn't say, gee, I think I'd like to get some fresh air. I'm going to get out of the vehicle, did she?
No, I asked her to step out.
What would have happened if she had said no and driven off?
If she would have driven off?
Yes.
Well,
she would have been charged with either fleeing and eluding or resisting arrest, wouldn't she?
No, she's free to go at that point.
She was. Did you tell her that?
I didn't, but she's free to go.
When you said to her, would you step out of the vehicle, you didn't say you don't have to? You can leave?
No, I did not say that.
And you're a fully uniformed police officer, right?
Yes.
And you got your vehicle back there with the lights flashing?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I think it's pretty clear that she was not free to leave.
all right.
Or in her mind, she was not free to leave.
Sergeant Bradley,
Yes,
at
ma'am.
that point in time, the question that I wasn't clear what your answer was her license in your vehicle at that time? When you
Yeah.
approached?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I cut you
When
off.
you
What you-
reapproached, was her license in your vehicle?
You know, I don't know 100%, but yeah, it is possible that it was, yes.
Your Honor, I have a copy of the video if the court would like to see it.
I don't think I need to see the video at this time.
Your Honor, based on the testimony that was presented just now, merely having the license not yet back in her possession doesn't make it that she was completely under custody. Again, the police officers are allowed to conduct brief investigations and speak to people and ask questions. He asked her, did not order her to get out of the vehicle. She came out of the vehicle. He asked her questions and she consented to answer those questions. There's nothing inherently or overtly custodial here by the officers performing what they are allowed to do, which is a brief Terry investigatory stop, which is what had occurred here.
Your Honor, I find the invocation of Terry versus Ohio interesting because Terry talks about a search. It talks about whether an officer has a right to conduct a search and under what circumstances. But here, and again, Your Honor, there is no requirement under Miranda that she be under arrest.
I know she needs to be detained. I agree with you on that particular point. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that under advisement for a moment to hear how the questioning goes, and then I'll let you know.
Your Honor, I have a couple of more questions if I can ask the officer before we
Yes.
move on. When you first asked her to step out of the vehicle, you were by the door of the vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes.
You asked her to move from that location, didn't you?
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
You asked her to move from that location, did you not?
Move from, I'm sorry, I might need a little bit of clarification.
Okay, you're standing by the door. You ask her to get out, she gets out. So she's standing by the door at that point, correct?
Yes, she steps out, correct.
Okay, then you moved her to the rear of her vehicle. Isn't that correct?
Well, I did not place any hands on her or anything like that.
I didn't say that. I said, did you move her to the back? Did you ask her or in some way direct her to the back of the vehicle?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm also a supervisor on the roads. They're calling me, so just one second if you don't mind.
All right, thank you. No worries. Actually, I'm going to do a little review of case law while you do that, okay?
I am, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
All right, are you back, Sergeant Bradley?
Yes, ma'am, I apologize.
You may proceed, Mr. Ghostley.
Well, Sergeant Bradley, at some point you and Ms. Gannon ended up at the rear of her vehicle, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And she was standing there.
At the rear of her vehicle?
Yes.
Yes, she was.
And you directed her to sit down on the curb, didn't you?
Yes, I did at some point, yes.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor, with regard to that issue.
Thank you. As I indicated, I'm going to allow for you to, Ms. Armstrong, ask just a few more questions before I make my determination as to the question of whether she was detained or not at that time.
Officer, for what purpose did you ask her to briefly move or step away from the vehicle?
From the side of the vehicle, ma'am.
Sorry?
From the side to the rear.
From the side to the rear?
Yes, is that what you're asking?
Why did you ask her to do that?
Yeah, so lane of traffic. We typically remove people from the side of the vehicle to the rear, just so they're not in traffic.
And I believe there was a question about asking her to sit on the curb. Is that something that occurred?
Yes.
And is there a reason that you asked her to sit on the curb?
Not in particular, not in that case, no.
And would you have returned her license if she did not want to get out of the vehicle and talk to you?
Yes, if she did not want to step out of the vehicle, yes, the license would have been returned.
Did she give any sort of indication, either verbal or behavior wise, that she did not want to get out of the vehicle to speak to you?
No, didn't.
Did you make any observations as to her behavior or demeanor when you were talking to her outside of the vehicle?
No, after the cigarette, there's nothing else in terms of nervousness. However, initial statements that she had stated to me led me to believe that there was something in the vehicle.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what led you to believe that there's something in the vehicle
Some of the statements she had made.
after you were questioning her?
Yes, at the rear of the vehicle, yes.
I don't have any further questions on this specific point in terms of the court's decision. If I can continue to ask questions about her responses to this interaction.
Well, it depends on what the questions are. So, you know.
Okay, I thought the court wanted me to continue on with this line of questioning in terms of the objection that Mr. Goldstein made. So the next questions I have to ask are the questions involving what he asked her and what she said.
Right, and that's what I'm referring to. I mean, officers are allowed to pull people over and ask them questions if they think that they are drinking and driving. So I'm just trying to figure out where the questions are at this point in time. I don't know what the questions are. So that's what I'm asking.
Okay, then I will ask my next question and we'll see if there's an objection. But when you had contact with the defendant outside of the vehicle, what did you ask her?
Just to make it easier, I have a standing objection. I'm not going to object to every question.
Thank
I have
you.
a standing objection. Okay.
I
Go ahead,
understand.
Ms. Armstrong.
So I asked if there was anything illegal in the vehicle, and she stated that she was 98% sure that there was not. She also stated to me that she promised there was nothing on her person, which led me to believe with some of those statements that there was something in the vehicle. She eventually admitted to me that there was a needle and syringe inside the vehicle.
All right, I'm going to stop you there. When you say eventually, you kept questioning her about that, sir?
Yeah, it was for a very, very short amount of time. So I asked her those initial questions. And then she, at that point, when I asked those two questions, she stopped making eye contact with me, which is also a sign of someone not being 100% truthful. I asked again if there was anything in the vehicle, and she at that time admitted that there was a syringe and a needle. And at that time, I'm sorry.
As to the issue of whether or not she was detained, the evidence that I have heard so far indicates that she was stopped and a search was done with respect to whether or not there were any outstanding warrants or anything of that nature. The evidence shows that there was not any arrest warrant of any sort, and that this was a traffic stop. Until then, she was asked to step out of the vehicle and at some point in time directed to sit on the curb area, and she complied with that. The officer then began to question her, and the questioning does not, in my opinion, lead to anything that has to do with whether or not she's drinking or driving or using drugs and driving. It is more questions as to whether or not she is in possession of any type of drugs. And I do not believe that that at that point in time she would have the standard, as I understand it, is that she has to, a reasonable person has to believe that they are able to leave. Given that he still had her driver's license at that time, and given that she had been directed to sit on the curb, that any statements that she made regarding whether or not there was drugs in the vehicle, I would rule would be suppressed and that they cannot come in. Due to the fact that she was not read Miranda, which she could waive if she so chose, but she wasn't given that opportunity.
And then may I continue the questioning?
You may.
Officer, at some point, based on your interaction with her, did you take her into custody?
Yeah, after she admitted that.
No, without saying what she said, just
Yep.
say that. Okay.
Yep, she was taken into custody.
And at some point, did you give her or read her Miranda rights?
Yes, as soon as the handcuffs were placed on her.
And did she indicate that she understood her rights?
Yes.
And then did she agree to speak with you?
Yes.
And waive those rights?
Yes.
And what did she tell you after Miranda?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. It's been many, many years, and I may get the name of this case wrong, but I think it's Guang Song, called The Fruit of the Poisonous Tree. Everything that stemmed from the point at which he began the improper interrogation is inadmissible. He would never have placed her under arrest had she not made the statement that you've ruled is inadmissible. He had no other probable cause. He had no other reason to search the vehicle or search her other than her statements.
Your Honor, also, it's been since law school, I think, that I've looked at that case. If I can have a moment. This was not presented as a motion to suppress, so nothing was presented or prepared in terms for these arguments.
I agree with you, Ms. Armstrong, on that. And I think that, because I have not looked at the fruit of the poisonous tree argument in a while myself. And so as a result, I think we need to brief that issue before I will make a ruling on that.
Your Honor, and may I also then brief the initial, I believe it's going to be relevant in terms of the fruit of the poisonous tree, to brief also whether or not the stop itself and the investigatory questioning that Your Honor ruled were suppressed. I believe that's going to be important to the focus of the fruit of the poisonous tree. So I would like to be able to brief that issue as well.
I'll accept additional arguments on that if you think it's necessary.
Thank you.
Obviously,
Is
Your
there
Honor,
a due date for these motions?
Sorry, Ms. Armstrong, hang on a second. Obviously, I'm going to object to that, Your Honor. But anyway, may I make a suggestion? Why don't we go ahead and take the testimony, and then decide later whether you're going to admit it or not. Otherwise, we'd have to have the sergeant come back later. I just didn't go ahead and take all the testimony.
I think that's a good resolution to it.
Okay.
Do you want him, since we're doing that, I think he did testify regarding the questioning as she was sitting on the curb prior to the arrest. And that testimony, I think, is already on the record. We can go ahead and take the testimony as to what happened after he arrested her at this point.
That's fine. And I'm not going to object to every question, but I've had my standing objection. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Sergeant, I think the last question where we left off on was after Miranda, what did she say to you?
She admitted that there was an Adidas bag belonging to her in the vehicle that contained a small amount of methamphetamines and needles.
And she said the bag belonged to her?
Yes.
Did she say anything about the possession of the methamphetamine and or needles?
Other than it belonged to her? No, that was yes.
Specifically that the methamphetamine also belonged to her?
Right, yes.
And based on that, those statements made, what did you do next?
We began to conduct a vehicle search.
And when you started that search, what did you observe in the vehicle?
Initially, we had to take a third person into custody that was hiding behind some back seats. She was taken into custody for multiple felony warrants.
And then did you conduct the search of the vehicle?
Yes.
And was that you alone or with another officer?
No, Officer Adam Hess also conducted the search.
And what did you locate inside the vehicle?
There was other narcotics located in the vehicle, heroin, methamphetamine, needles. In regards to the bag belonging to Gina, Officer Hess conducted that search, locating the meth and the needles inside that bag.
And as the officer in charge of this case, did you then take, when Officer Hess located that information, or sorry, the drugs and the needle, did you take custody of those items?
I did.
And what did you do with the suspected drugs that you found?
They were transported to the station, and I actually tested them with the TrueNarc analyzer, and it was confirmed the substance that we suspected to be meth inside the bag was confirmed as such as methamphetamine.
And prior to performing this TrueNarc analyzer test, did you do a self-check on the TrueNarc device?
Yes, ma'am. Before the actual test and after.
And what were the results of the self-checks?
They came back clear.
And did the TrueNarc analyzer machine then produce written reports reflecting those results?
Yes.
And was the item also weighed?
It was, yes.
But weighed with the container or no?
I was with.
With the container. And was after the test, what did you do with the substance?
Secured in our evidence lockers.
I have no further questions.
Thank
I have
you.
no questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, how long will the parties need to provide the briefs?
Let's see here.
While you figure that out, if there are no further questions for Sergeant Bradley, we thank you for your appearance here today. May he be excused.
I have no objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
Sergeant Bradley, you may be excused.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Do you have any witnesses, Mr. Goldstein? I should have asked.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I'm not certain, if the court wants us to provide a brief first and then Mr. Goldstein responds or vice
Yes,
versa.
that is.
Yes,
Well,
okay.
Mr. Goldstein made a verbal argument that pursuant to People versus Song, which is what, I think it's US versus Song, that this would be the fruit of the poisonous tree. And the people asked for additional time to brief that, and I'm allowing that. So I think the people should respond first. And yeah, I also allowed for you to respond regarding the stop and whether it had gone beyond an investigatory stop into a custodial interrogation, whether she was under formal arrest or not. And based on what I have heard preliminarily here, I believe that it was, but I'll look at the case law to make certain. I can tell you that my schedule allows me to be back out here on May 24th. And then again on June 14th. Those are my days. If you want to put it over to June 14th, it would give everybody opportunity for you to brief it and then give Mr. Goldstein an opportunity as well.
I appreciate that, Your Honor. I do have a fairly large trial starting in about 10 days, so June 14th would work better for me.
And why don't we set this for like 11 o'clock? Because, well, there's no testimony to be taken, so we could do this one first in the morning. Actually, by that time, I will have reviewed it and we could do it first thing while everybody's getting prepped for the cases that are going to go to exam. So why don't we actually do it at 9?
I don't know, Judge. Ms. Armstrong doesn't have a lot to do on Tuesdays.
Fine.
9 o'clock, fine with you, Ms. Armstrong?
That works, absolutely, Your Honor.
That's fine, Your Honor. Thank you.
And is there if I could, I know I also myself have 2 jury trials starting on May 16th. So if there could be a due date for my brief to also give Mr. Goldstein sufficient time to respond in the court to look at it at that. So if we're coming back on the 14th, if Mr. Goldstein's maybe could be due by the 7th, that will give the court a week.
And then you can have till the 30th of May or 31st of May, whatever that date is.
Is that sufficient time?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I already know what the issue is, so I can start working on it,
okay.
That's fine.
All right, that is fine with me. So I'll see everyone here on June 14th at 9 a.m. Any issues with respect to bond?
No, Your Honor.
All right, bond is continued.